Aloha nerds, welcome back to the Salawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. Do you like my haircut? That's more important than the review, really. Do you like my haircut? Does this look creepy or cool? Would you date me? Or would you not date me? Don't tell me. I don't want to know. Anyway, I'm just full of stupidity today. Follow at MJS Presents on Instagram for my more timely written reviews. Most of the time, I'll have either already recorded a gut reaction or I haven't recorded one yet. And so, well, what I'll do is just try to write something up real quick, just kind of summarize my feelings without spoiling too much about the movie. It's something I'm starting to do more and more, but if you follow the hashtag TheSalawag's gut reaction, you should be able to see all my written reviews on things, or at least for the most part, it's used as sort of I'm telling you when my podcast is up. MJS, for those who don't know, like why is that your handle? For those who don't know, MJS is my working personality, you could say, from the other dimension. You. The Salawag is I, and I am much cooler than MJS. But MJS, he likes to, make videos and collect toys. What a geek. Anyway, I like movies, and I'm really fascinated in watching commentaries and interviews and really getting the filmmaker's point of view on why they made the movie. I'm less and less interested in just a literal emotional gut reaction. That's why every single one of my podcasts is kind of a sucker punch. You're like, oh, gut reaction. Well, that sounds like he's going to talk about entertaining things. Nope. He's talking about the themes of the movie in this scene. I don't care. I don't care. That's not my favorite scene. Talk about my favorite scene. That's why every podcast episode is like that. But here I am just trying to let you know. That's on purpose. It's kind of a show examining the technical aspects of the movie as much as possible. But I choose to try to side with the filmmaker or try to examine what the filmmaker did on some kind of structural point or thematic point. I think the idea behind the movie really is the most important thing. It is what makes the movie. There's a common saying that I do not agree with, that the idea that it doesn't matter what your idea is, it's how you achieve it. And I just think yes and no to that. Like, it does absolutely matter what your idea is. My gut reaction today is for Terminator 2, Judgment Day. One of my favorite films. My two favorite films, you can't necessarily tell the second one by my room, but definitely you can tell one of them. Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 are hands down my favorite films of all time. I think they are potentially the greatest movies ever made. I still haven't seen that many movies, but certainly even after, I don't know, 3 French films and all of Asian cinema that I got to gobble up during college, I was like, okay, I still love Terminator 2 more. Sorry, Amelie. Anyway, no offense to the French or to Amelie, which is absolutely another one of, I think, one of the best movies I've ever seen. But Jurassic Park, Terminator 2, I grew up watching them on the 4x3 screen, the tube television. And there was something about both movies that just captured me. I've already made a couple podcast episodes on why it's great about Jurassic Park. You can watch them and decide for yourself if you think they're worth your time. And I'll just admit, I was less the Salawaggy back then, and it was more MJS-y. Took some time to form this persona. I had to really break him down, but the adjacent universe exists, and it's all mine. Anyway, Terminator 2 being the second, it's not one above the other. To me, these two films are so fantastic. But so my gut reaction on Terminator 2. Now this movie, like I said, I already know this movie is not. My gut reaction today has nothing to do with having just seen the movie for the first time. It's just that I have seen it. Whatever I've watched is something I've recently watched. It doesn't matter that I've seen it a million times or whether I've seen it for the first time. That's the whole thing about this podcast. But my gut reaction is not purely emotional. I think there's a lot of reviews that are purely emotional. They come with a lot of personal baggage, oftentimes baggage related to whatever the social media outcry is for the moment. And I really think all of that is really good marketing, but ultimately not really good for you. So here I am with a very positive review on a movie that I think most people agree is a fantastic film. Whether or not you think it's better than the first Terminator, and if you think the first Terminator is better, you're wrong. I'm sorry, you're just wrong. Debate settled today. Today we're settling the debate. A debate I started with a substitute teacher 15 years ago. I'm settling today. And you're not on the other side, so you can't disagree with me with better points. Wow, the Salawag is petty. Anyway, so Terminator 2, my gut reaction. For those of you who haven't seen Terminator 2, it is the follow-up sequel to the first Terminator. The first two Terminators are the only Terminator films that exist. They were both written and directed by James Cameron with some co-writing. But these first two films were created by him and use his philosophy on quality storytelling over the rest. You know, the technology and all of that stuff. Now, he is a nerd, a genuine true nerd. He wants to build up the technology and move technology further than it's ever gone before. But he also understands that when you're making a movie, when you're on the creative side of things, yes, does it have to achieve entertainment value and all of that? But most importantly, what is the story? How strong is the story itself? Because that is what, and why are you making the story? When I was learning how to make videos, I was lucky enough to get paid to learn as a 15-year-old or 16-year-old under Bay Area Video Coalition, and they had video training, and they talked about when you're making a video, there's levels of things you have to be thinking about as you make the video. And it was kind of like PEMDAS for math, where it's like, well, first you do whatever's in the parentheses for an equation. But it was for like how to achieve quality filmmaking in video making, which is, all right, what's your story? What's the flow of the story? What's the style? And it kind of makes this kind of list and says, well, what's the most important things on the list? And they would ask each one of us what we felt was the most important. And they would kind of say one or two or three are the most important. But at the end of the day, you know, it all comes down to why are you making the video, because that's going to generate the rest. Now you watch Terminator 2 and you're watching, oh my god, Arnold Schwarzenegger, a robot sent from the future, is throwing around bikers and taking their clothes, and that's how he's in disguise amongst people. And wow, that's what a violent intro for those who haven't seen the movie. And then you see this very creepy cop walking around. Well, it's a regular guy who took out a cop on some kind of inspection, and then took his car and took his clothes. And so, okay, well, who's this creepy cop guy? You know, obviously the Terminator is pretty scary, and it all centers around this one boy. Both the Terminator and this creepy cop guy are both searching for a child, and they both find him in a mall, and they both go at it and attack each other over the boy. And Arnold gets shot up, and you understand, oh, he's a freaking robot. That's like he's the flesh is just there to pretend he's human, but also the cop ends up having these metal splashes where all of Arnold's bullets go, and you realize, oh, he is some kind of liquid metal thing. And it's such a crazy visual battle that these two characters go through throughout the whole movie. They rescue Sarah Connor. I'm spoiling the movie. They rescue Sarah Connor, who is John Connor's mother. John Connor is the boy. And she's in a mental institution. Who's this crazy chick in a mental institution? And it turns out, we find out as the story goes on, that Sarah Connor, her father, the father of John Connor, was sent from the future to save her life, and they fell in love. And they had this child, John, and John is essentially the soldier slash general who will save the world in the future. So before Save the Cheerleader, Save the World, there was Save that little renty jerk kid who can hack things and stuff. Save him to save the world. And essentially that's the plot of the movie. Everyone's trying to save John. So John is kind of a little bit of, the plot in his own existence. But he's a character in his own right and has his own perspective on things and has his own values. In fact, John Connor represents the values of the movie. So part of the creation of Terminator 2 was having this message that this whole movie about two robots fighting over the life of a child and a mom who's from a mental institution, she's unhinged, she's crazy, she's not quite seeing life the right way. All of this swirls around one child, and the child has a message too. When it's revealed that Arnold Schwarzenegger is protecting John Connor and the liquid metal dude's trying to kill him, across the movie to protect John, the Terminator violently assaults a number of people, and John freaks out, and he does not, he values human life. He doesn't want to. Even though he doesn't mind, giving someone a bit of a rough lesson, John is not really after extreme violence. When he sees the level of violence that the Terminator is capable of, and will go straight to killing people if he feels it's necessary, John realizes, Jesus, no, hey, Robo Dude, stop killing people. That's not cool. That's not right. I'm not into that. And on part of that is knowing that he's supposed to be the future leader of the world. But the other thing is that this is innately his value. And there's a kid, a best friend to John, who John kind of leads around. And during the commentary, and this kid is with him in the mall, and that's kind of the last scene in the mall. The scene with his friend is basically when John is on the run from the Terminators. In the commentary, James Cameron talks about how leadership is also innate. It's something that comes out of people naturally. And so that is displayed in John being in charge of his friend. That these things weren't just something told to him and so he tried to measure up to it. It is something that existed within him. The same being with Sarah Connor, who in the first movie is described as this legend, this legendary hero who also showed their leader how to be a leader and how to be a man. And that's really powerful stuff. All these things that were innate in the character is also innate in the mother, who is, I would say, still the kind of the main character, because she's the one going through a huge personal arc throughout this movie. But beyond that, the John Connor represents the theme and message of the movie, which is valuing human life, and it's really about people valuing human life. The title sequence of Terminator 2 is essentially flames burning down a children's playground. It's a really haunting visual, because you're seeing swings burn, and you're seeing the little things kids ride on. It's a really haunting visual with really beautiful music by Brad Fiedel. And beautiful and haunting and humanistic music from Brad Fiedel. It's such a powerful theme. But not only that title sequence is actually made from a flashback scene that's cut out of the movie. Or a flash forward scene. In the movie, at a certain point, Terminator divulges to Sarah Connor that Miles Dyson is the guy who basically created the microchip that creates the Terminator. No microchip, no evolution of artificial intelligence. The end of the war could end before it ever begins. This obviously, sets a fire under Sarah Connor's butt to go wipe out Miles Dyson. And there's this crazy sequence where she is using all this sort of SWAT weaponry or military weaponry, is basically blowing up the dude's house to get to him. And you just see he's a nice family man. Joe Morton plays Miles Dyson. You see he's just the fantastic Joe Morton. Fantastic actor. He's in Smallville too. I love Smallville. But Joe Morton is, as you see, he's just a kind family man, a brilliant scientist. He represents the American dream. She goes and tries to kill him. I'm just spoiling this movie now. Spoilers. Spoiler, I'm spoiling the whole goddamn movie. If you haven't seen Terminator 2, go watch it. I'm just spoiling it now. She goes to try to kill Miles Dyson, and then she chooses not to. She gets to the moment of truth of standing over Miles Dyson, and Miles's family comes to his rescue. His wife and his son come to his rescue and basically stand in front of him. And it's the nuclear family, right? It's the wife and the son, the child. So it's the nuclear family. As she's standing over them, she just sees how human they are and how fragile they are, and she realizes, what the hell is she doing? And this is her kind of coming back to her humanity. This is a huge emotional arc, and it's the thematic arc. It's very important to the whole crux of the movie. It's not just an event that happens. It's a signature moment where James Cameron talks about, I could have wrote in the Terminator getting there in time and stopping her, or John getting there first and stopping her, but it would not have made the point of her character change, that she needed to change as a character. Because throughout the movie, one of the most heartbreaking scenes, although it's quick, when Terminator and John rescue Sarah from the mental institution, they're attacked by the T-1000. John Connor's in the back seat. T-1000 bashes that back window open and is literally about to kill John. And Terminator shoots him just in time. After they get away, John is just so happy to see his mom, and he goes for a hug, and she just starts checking him for wounds. And you realize that her version of love for this kid has just purely been basic protection. And he just wants to have a tender moment with his real mom. Again, earlier in the movie, we see John living with foster parents, and there's an antagonistic, douchey quality to the parents, and John reflects that antagonism and sort of behavior. But when you see John with his real mom, all he wants is that genuine connection that he knows exists out there, and he knows his mom is capable of. But she is just so far gone to military protector, raiser of the raising parents of the savior of humanity. She's just so far gone into her mission. She's barely a person. Humanity for her is just, let me just check, make sure no wounds. Okay, you're good then. That's fine. That's kind of her tough, gritty attitude. So she's just barely human, except to protect her son. She's just barely human. In her journey, when you see her in the mental institution, the extended cut shows you that she's really in a place of abuse. The theatrical cut shows that at the very least she has no concern about beating up the guard that creepily licked her face. There's just a whole bunch of bad history there. So he clearly is a character who had it coming. But she had no compunction for beating him up. She didn't care who she had to hurt to get out of the mental institution, because she, again, tries to get herself out of the mental institution and actually almost succeeds, except for the Terminator showing up, which gives us one of our most iconic signature sequences of that dreamlike nightmare sequence of her seeing the Terminator come out of the elevator. And this is, although she's tough as nails and not scared of anybody, this is the one thing she's afraid of. And it's because she did go through a whole movie being afraid of him in the first place. That clarity and that depth and that many levels to a single character is fantastic. And this is all done through action. She does not have a lot of dialogue to describe herself, but this is what her character is going through. You're imbuing it, and you understand that it's happening in the movie. So I understand that sometimes with action movies, reviewers will criticize the movie as being kind of light on story, but it's an action movie. There's different rules to action movies. You have to watch how the character acts and behaves to the same extent and way that you watch how a character acts and behaves in a drama. The difference is in a drama, those things will be spoken or at some point revealed in a very clear and obvious way. But in an action movie, action is about flow. It's about how the action represents character. As Guillermo del Toro describes, action is a dance. And a dance is about character. It's about what's going on between two characters. So, under that lens, when we get to what would be considered by Hollywood terms an action sequence of Sarah Connor mowing down Miles Dyson's house, but it's also on Miles Dyson's side, it's a horror sequence. He's being chased by the Terminator, by James Cameron's own words. In the sequence, when Sarah Connor is mowing down Miles Dyson's house and trying to kill him, and almost succeeds until his family jumps in the way, she is essentially the real second Terminator, or she's the real Terminator of the movie, by James Cameron's words in his interview used on the commentary. And that's a thematic central point. That's a sort of a core reason. The theme and the story are the core ideas and reasons that produce the movie that you see. So that being human life, John Connor represents the theme. So human life has value. Sarah Connor is the main character who has an arc. She transforms from beginning to end of the movie. In the beginning, she says to the people at the crazy hospital, "You are all dead. It doesn't matter to me whether you live or not, because you're already dead." The only thing that matters to her is protecting her son, who's going to save the people who survive. Of course, there's no way for her to literally know if all these people are actually dead. But most likely, if they stay in the same place in the next 5 to 10 years, boom. But anyway, so Sarah, in the middle of her story arc of trying to kill Miles Dyson, this is not just plot. This is a character arc. That her as a character, yes, it changes the plot. Plot is the physical action of the movie. In my writing class in college, it was called the external goal and the internal goal. Sarah Connor's external goal is to kill Miles Dyson to protect her son. Her internal goal is to protect her son. You know what I mean? That's how kind of almost two-dimensional she's become because of her focus on the mission. But the moment of seeing Miles with his family breaks her down, and she makes the choice. See, the important thing of the story is that the human makes the choice to be human. There's so many different angles in which this movie is about how different people make different choices for different reasons, and they can all go the same exact way. And Miles Dyson is in a deleted scene available on the extended director's cut. Miles Dyson just wants to create technology that saves people, that makes people live a safer and happier life, so they don't have to do as much, don't have to work as hard, and can get around easier. That's why he's making what will become Skynet. But once the military takes it and applies it to their applications, Skynet turns on humanity, because once it becomes self-aware, it realizes humanity will at some point try to destroy it, and just decides, nope, we're not going to have that conversation, and Skynet nukes everybody. But it all came from a simple dream to just make people better and happier through technology. He has no idea he's essentially the father of the Terminator. In the action movie, you get to have the physical, fun experience, but it's an allegory, it's a metaphor for what goes on within us. That's the real purpose of the movie. You know, everyone gets distracted by the action and, oh, it's the same plot because the Terminator is chasing a person. But it's not the same movie because of the reason the movie was made is completely different. The story and the lengths these characters go through and the ways in which they suffer and the reason that they suffer are completely different from the first movie. The first Terminator film, in many ways, if you really break it down, is it's a slasher flick with a sci-fi twist. You know, and James Cameron himself, in the same video I was talking about, said he simply had a dream of the endoskeleton rising from fire, and he knew that it had melted away something that was covering it. And that's what generated his need to make the movie. And so he just kind of put all the pieces together to make the movie, to make that visual happen. And that's amazing. But, you know, that's a total different reason. That's a this would be cool reason to make a movie. And hence the slasher elements make sense. There was in the script for the first Terminator the plot to destroy Skynet before it happens, and they were just going to blow up the building or something like that. And I'm glad that that plot was abandoned, and they just kept it simple to just survive the Terminator. But that's the reason that movie was made. That's not many levels going on there. Of course, nuclear war is the context, but it's a context for the time travel. In the second movie, sort of James Cameron himself comes out more. He talks about being a conservationist and I guess what was it, like a laid back activist. But James Cameron has this kind of value for human life within himself. That's a value that he has. And he talks about in the 80s being terrified of nuclear war and seeing all the 50s tests and how that just terrified him. And he partially was making Terminator 2 as a warning to humanity to think about what it's doing. Sarah Connor has a dream sequence, and this is her motivation for trying to kill Miles Dyson. She has a dream sequence of seeing New York, and in essence also a flash forward. She has a dream of seeing a nuke explode in Los Angeles. She happens to be at a playground watching the 80s movie, the first Terminator version of herself as a waitress, raising John and playing with him in the playground. And in this dream, the nuke goes off and she watches everyone fry, and she fries herself, and we see the entirety of Los Angeles get devastated by the bomb. And one of the haunting things is that James Cameron said in the interviews is like, I made this as a warning to society to not use nuclear weapons and to essentially still be afraid of this. We should still be afraid of this. This is not okay. And to be more human, and to be more human to each other. It's funny because when I watched Terminator 2, I had no sense of the potential race relation context of Sarah Connor standing over Miles Dyson, but it's certainly there. But I don't think that's the reason it's happening in the movie. I think it's happening in the movie because Sarah as a Connor, because Sarah Connor needs to have her arc, and her arc needs to represent the goal of the movie, which is that it's about becoming more human. The Terminator himself becomes more human by the end of the movie. But his admission and sort of the reason he sacrifices himself is because he realizes that is as human as he can possibly get. His existence is still a threat to John Connor, because if his body is found, then Miles Dyson's work, which was all based off of the chip from the first Terminator that was destroyed, that work would continue anyway. So the Terminator at the end of the movie is sacrificing himself for the same reason Miles Dyson sacrifices himself. Because once Sarah decides not to kill him, that's when the Terminator and John show up. And in that scene, John gets his hug. Because John checks on her. and is making sure she's okay. And Terminator checks on Miles Dyson. He's looking out. He's, hey, Dad, are you okay? You know, you made me. You know, how you doing? But in the moment when Terminator and John show up, and Sarah has not killed Miles Dyson, that's when she cries and she apologizes and she finally becomes a human mom, and they actually hug. And so for John, that's his arc. John's arc is he just wants his mother to be a mom. And so he gets his conclusion to that in this moment. Sarah Connor has finally decided to become human, but she's not fully human yet. She still needs to complete her mission. And then she can actually be mom because they're not running for their lives. But you know, again, all of the meaning of the movie is held in that sequence. Everything John represents occurs in that sequence, and from that point on, we're just kind of having the fun. We get all the action and explosions and all of that stuff, epic sequences, where the Terminator still doesn't kill any human beings. And the T-1000, luckily, gets turned into a big mutated monster and falls into a vat of molten liquid. I love it. Hot liquid is the thing needed to kill the T-1000, which is cool liquid. Interesting. But yeah, that's pretty good stuff, right? I mean, that's a pretty powerful reason to make a movie. But the whole reason for the movie being made was to celebrate the value of human life. It's even in Sarah Connor's voiceover at the very tail end of the movie. Now, what you don't know, and this is why I say every Terminator film made after Terminator 2 is a fan film, a very expensive fan film. Very nice, very well done. That's it. I say it because in the director's cut of Terminator 2, there is a coda. There's an end scene that goes back to the playground, and this time we're in 2029, and it's a utopia. And John is a senator running for president, and you see John is playing with his children in the playground, and she says he still fights the machines, but from a different battleground. And he's a senator now. So that's just powerful stuff right there. I love the idea that that's the true ending of the movie, that James Cameron made Terminator 2 be the conclusion. It's not. But when they watched the movie as a whole, it kind of dragged the ending down. They wanted to leave the ending ambiguous, not necessarily for more sequels, but just to, it was just more interesting that way. But the fact that not only was it scripted, it was shot, it was edited, it was part of the movie at one point. And so I don't see its omission as necessarily your freedom to make more movie. I think its omission just makes it a better movie, because now you can you just enjoy the movie more. It's about the flow. The movie flowed better just not knowing, and ending on this shot of the road and that little bit of voiceover from Sarah Connor. And what's beautiful though is that you could, even though it's a voiceover, you could still kind of see it as the tapes that she was leaving for John. Because you do see her recording on a tape recorder, I think, in the deleted Utopia scene, and you realize that the voiceover is actually from future Sarah in the utopian future. She's really saying, these things happened. She's chronicling an event that occurred, and she's celebrating that they truly did win. They beat the machines and humanity got to live. That is a powerful story to be told right there. That's the hope of the movie, that the movie will create that future. But that ending really would have not been, it would have been like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? That's very sweet, but okay, all right, whatever. You know what I mean? It kind of takes the punch out of all the violence, because the beautiful thing I think about both the ending of the first Terminator and the ending of the second Terminator is that feeling that you're on the road again and you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. I think movies sometimes just end better when you feel like there's potentially more story going on, but you can just imagine it. But what I like is that there is a sense when the Terminator himself goes into the metal, also representing the AI in essence, kind of learning humanity. The thing built to kill learns a sense of humanity. That's the Terminator completing his arc. So even though I said the two of the characters' arcs were concluded and it was mostly just action from that point, the film does not stop until the story stops. And so once the Terminator completes his arc, that is when the movie ends. That is why emotionally we are gripped in, because we are still wondering, did the Terminator become human? And if they didn't give us that answer, I think this would be a very well liked sequel, but not be considered better. But because they gave us the answer at the very end of Terminator 2, I already said spoilers, and this movie is 30 years old, so watch it. At the end of Terminator 2, when Terminator's all got a missing arm, all his metal parts are hanging out of every part of his body, and he decides he needs to go into the molten metal like the T-1000, and he needs to be destroyed completely. There can be no trace, nothing to rebuild him. And in that moment, and John doesn't want him to die. You know, he, in essence, got a father figure out of this character. And I really appreciate just how great Edward Furlong's performance is, because Linda Hamilton kills it throughout the whole movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger kills it throughout the whole movie. But Edward Furlong's performance really sells how much he loved and cared about the Terminator. He really does a great performance at the end of this movie. And Arnold really beautifully played like the robot who can feel but just can't express it. You know what I mean? I think that's the best part. He was kind of somber, but that is as much as he could produce with the fact that he's a killing machine only designed for a certain function. So, yeah, he's like, I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do. You know, he's literally admitting that he's not human, and that for that reason he can't stay. You know, he's just not made for that. And he has to, if he doesn't, again, plot reasons, he has to go. But you know, that scene of Edward Furlong just crying as he's watching Terminator go away, you know, it's so heartbreaking. Like, again, this is an action movie. You're not, I like action movies that are big and explosive, and it's just a big fire blooming boom boom. You know, I don't like to think they're in my action movie, blah blah blah. I'm sorry I made you Southern. I don't know why it went that way. But you know what I mean? I like them dumb and stupid. It kind of sounds better, though. But yeah, this is an action movie with a huge amount of emotion, where the male character cries and has emotional concerns. And the female character is the coldest, baddest motherfucker on Earth. And is the cold killing machine that learns not to kill. There's so much story going on here being told at the same point, because this scene also features Sarah Connor shaking hands with the Terminator. So she has finally come to, not only did she become human and realize the value of human life, but she has come full circle with her pain. You know, this pain that she's carried with her since the Terminator came into her life. She can finally look at this thing and shake its hand and realize, you're made from the same stuff, but you're not that same guy. And I'm, you know, just shaking his hand represents a lot of getting over baggage for her. So this is a story. As a story, it's her emotions coming to some sense of closure, even though her arc was essentially complete. This is the denouement, or this is the proof that she has changed, and the closure to that long, that 2 movie wide internal struggle that she's been going through to have this moment with the machine. So that's a lot of emotion and story going on, a lot of emotional content, a lot of story things going on in the film. The action movie, it's just a different genre. It's just a different genre of storytelling. It does not mean that there's not story. It does not mean that there's not meaning and purpose that drives why the events occur in the movie. If you choose to watch with blinders on and say, wow, well, that explosion was good, but I didn't really like when they were talking. You know what I mean? Well, that's your choice for how you absorb the movie. But if you take them off and you accept everything that's coming out of that movie, maybe you don't want the meaning, maybe you don't want all that. That's fine. But if you're watching Terminator 2 and you're the same person who says, I only like big explosions and I don't care about story, but Terminator 2 is your favorite movie, well, you're going to have to come to terms with the fact that you clearly enjoy story. That's all I got to say. And quality storytelling. And all those levels and layers and themes and meanings and the function of the movie is all a part of what the artist is supposed to do. It is the stuff that comes for free that the most work is put into. Although a lot of stress and work is put on the effects. Why are you doing those effects? The realistic depiction of the nuclear explosion is a warning to humanity to stop going there, because it only has one conclusion. The artist, this is why the term seer came to be long ago. It's a person who sees the patterns of humanity, sees the way things go, and either they can literally visualize a consequence or an option or fate, or at the very least they can basically sense where things are headed, and they're just trying to tell you not to go that way. This is why the seer exists. This is why the artist exists. And not all movies, not all art have to be like this. You can have your fun-filled movies that are just there to enjoy. But ideally, at least every now and again, we need films that are about this, that are the warnings against our worst nature, and to tell us to work hard. It's not going to be easy. It's so much easier to pull the trigger, but it's not going to be easy. But it is the better choice, and it leads to a better, happier conclusion for everybody. That is the point. That is the point of the movie. There's so much going into the movie from a conceptual standpoint that we would never have gotten any of that if that heart wasn't there. The realism, the incredible action, the reason for the action, why it happens a certain way. The Terminator doesn't kill a single one of the bikers in the opening of the movie. And, Arnold wanted that. He was like, I should be wiping these people out. But James Cameron, again, in the interview, says he had a moral conundrum. That essentially, he could not have his hero slaughtering humans if the whole purpose of the hero is to save humanity by the end of the movie. It was just too much of a sort of, morally, that doesn't really make sense if I'm trying to present it that way. So he chose to have the Terminator still brutally harm these guys, but none of them were clearly dead. It's, you can make up in your own mind if any of them died, but really, James Cameron in the interview saying none of those bikers died, because I wanted to have a moral continuity to the character. He used this very specific term, but he wanted the morality of the movie to be sort of tight. And so he felt if he had the Terminator wiping all these guys out, well, it was not much of a hero of humanity if he's killing people right off the bat. Hence the scene where John, after Terminator rescues John, they pull off to some parking lot, and John wants to get away from the Terminator, so he calls for help from these two big guys. And then he kind of realizes the Terminator will just do whatever he says, and realizes, oh, I don't need you guys. And he doesn't really care about them. And so he tells the Terminator, just get, play with him a little bit, get rid of him. And so he grabs one by the hair and throws him or something like that. And then the buddy comes and attacks him, and the Terminator tosses the one guy and then is about to pull a gun and shoot the buddy. And that's where John stops him. Hey, no, stop that right now. You don't need to kill this guy. And then Terminator's like, but I'm a Terminator. It's what I do. But why? It's of the Terminator asking questions, looking for some kind of parameter for why he would not do what he is literally designed to do. Even future John didn't seem to be like, hey, and don't be killing people unnecessarily. I'm like, no, just protect me. That's what you got to do. And that's the starting point of John defining his own character. He didn't really care if the guys got hurt, but then all of a sudden it's going too far, and he realizes, okay, well, that wasn't cool on my part, I guess. I really didn't know where that was going to lead to. But that, again, that's all part of the message of the movies. Like, you don't know where these things are going to lead to, but they can only lead a certain path. So that's a lot of thought going into what's supposed to be a shoot 'em up, I don't care, I don't think hard movie. No, the packaging is there to entertain you, but there's a deeper meaning behind the movie. The idea generates the execution. That is what the artist understands. The critic does not understand. The audience member does not understand. But the artist must know that going into the start. Why are you making the movie? Is it just to have fun? That's totally fine. You do not have to leave this podcast and go, I could only make art if it has deeper meanings. No, because you might make a stupid meaning and then no one wants to watch your movie. No, just make what you want to make. That's fine. But know why you're making it. That's all. That's what matters. James Cameron had a very specific reason for making Terminator 2 the way he made it. And it's because he does care about humanity. He made Avatar, which is the tree hugger movie, literally a tree hugger movie. And that was a criticism that went into making the movie. But he has a humanitarian goal out of his films. So that's something to analyze. And that is why when it comes to certain filmmakers, my thing is you don't compare their movies to other people's movies. That is foolish. When it comes to certain filmmakers, you compare their movies to their other movies. Because you're looking at how did the filmmaker go about achieving whatever goal it was they had. And oftentimes filmmakers have a different kind of motivation going into each movie. They want each movie to still be as entertaining or enthralling as their last movie, but how can we do it differently? How can we do things new and fresh, and how can it be fresh for me so I'm not just treading on the same ground? But also, why am I making this movie? Am I just doing this as a paycheck, or am I doing it because I want humanity to stop killing itself? And that's something to applaud and something to celebrate, and why I made this video. I just wanted to finally, I hope I won that argument, substitute teacher. If you ever watch this, yeah, I'm that guy. I'm that guy who thought, this kid don't know what he's talking about Terminator 2 being better than Terminator 1. What the hell's wrong with this guy? I'm sure there's a lot of random substitutes just watching this going, I do know a guy. But it's not all of you. It's just one of you. Can't remember if you had glasses or not. But anyway, so that's me finally getting my years-long baggage of trying to argue against that substitute teacher finally concluded. I'm really glad I did that as a one-sided video where there can be no response. That's really important, that when you have an argument with someone, you just make a one-sided video where you don't accept their side and you're right, because like a 2-year-old, you're right. That's how little kids think. But as an adult, also makes sense. Yes, yes. Good job, YouTubers. Good job, video podcasters. Always post one-sided videos where you don't care what the other person thinks or don't treat the other person as a human being. That's that's how you do it. That's what podcasting is about, man. The other person is not a human being with feelings. Oh yeah, you would not say that to their face, would you? You little podcaster. Damn right. Actually, I would say this to my substitute teacher's face. Except at the time, at 15 years old, I didn't have the DVD. So I didn't watch it. So I didn't have the right answers. All I said was, it's better. You have reasons. I don't have reasons. I have reasons now, man. A 1 hour video of reasons, man. Man. That's right. I podcast right. Right? Da, 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 na, 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 na. Oh yeah, remember, don't like, don't subscribe, and don't comment. Am I talking about this show? Honestly, maybe. I mean, did anyone get anything out of that? I was hungry for my Pop-Tart the whole time. This thing has been sitting here this whole time. I'm hungry.